also, so Bob Loukas the other day, which, yeah, I mean, we can hate on him all we want in terms of him wanting to engagement farm like Richard Hart fans and stuff like that every now and then. But in terms, he does look at the Bitcoin 4-year cycles a lot. He posted a really controversial tweet the other day. And, usually, again, the only time he's controversial is when he tries to criticize HEX or whatever. But he was projecting an 8-year gap after this Bitcoin top until we get a next one. Now, he was claiming that this would still be following the 4-year cycle, but essentially what he's saying is when we get a Bitcoin top in 24, 25, that we're going to be looking until like 2032, 2033 until there's another top in Bitcoin, that he thinks there's going to be this really long winter. And then he even speculated maybe even 12 years between for Bitcoin top. Now, here's a caveat, though. While that sounds like maniacal, the other thing that I think also sounds maybe not maniacal, but wrong, is he is also calling, though, for Bitcoin to get to 180K this cycle. So if you're calling for that high of a Bitcoin top this cycle, which, again, I disagree with, I mean, I hope I'm wrong. But if you're calling for that high of one, and then he's projecting 8 years in between it breaking that again, I mean, I don't know. To me, it sounds far-fetched, but then again, he's calling for 180K. I guess I just don't agree with anything of what he's saying here in this scenario. But what do you make of that, Ewok? Because, you could, even though you would say like, oh yeah, not another new all-time high for 8 years or whatever, that, that also plays in like it hitting whatever that hypothetical number is, 180K again sometime, maybe the next cycle, but not a new all-time high until the second coming bull cycle after that. But what do you make of all of those opinions? And, we got to keep in mind too, that doesn't mean the same thing necessarily for ETH and certain altcoins along the way. So,
well,
what do you
it almost does, though. I mean, because if you look at the cycles are all around the Bitcoin halving, right? So I think this time we're going from 6 point whatever down to 3 point whatever. The next halving will go from 3 down to 1.5. So it's going to be harder and harder to get. That's why the price actually does what it does, because there is a rush to get it, knowing that the inflation model has just diminished. So that doesn't change, right? The halvening's still the halvening. I don't see that being a top. I think he's far overshooting what it really will be. Maybe not too much, but by at least 40 or 50,000, I think he's going over what I think it'll be. Now, again, I'm not Bob Loukas, and he says a lot of controversial stuff a lot of times, I think, just to get engagement. I don't always think it's an actual prediction. Sometimes I think he's fishing for sentiment from people to make to make a better decision. I know Sami does that a little bit too. I think he puts things out there and says things that are a little far-fetched to get reaction, to see where the sentiment really is. And then he can adjust his personal thoughts. And I think Loukas does that as well. But I don't see that long of a gap in between. Maybe, we've heard this mentioned by RH a lot, that the S curve is really approaching its max for Bitcoin. The massive gains have pretty much gone away at this point.
Right.
Now, what does the S curve look like? Does it go up? Does it pause and then start back up again? I'm not sure how that S curve all plays out. Like, in theory, I haven't done a whole lot of S curve research to know if it approaches the top as an S and then levels out and then continues again. I don't know if that's part of it, or if it really just kind of falls over. So, again, we'll have to see. But as long as crypto has been around, that 4-year cycle has been the 4-year cycle because of the halvening. And it runs across the board into all your altcoins. Now, if you find another altcoin that may take off and go on its own, I think that could potentially happen this cycle. It'll also depend on, does Ethereum ever flip flop? Do they take that number one spot? Do the market cap flip? The flippening, does it really happen?
Yeah.
And become the number one coin? Well, that could also change the cycle. So there's a lot of things at play. I just don't see an 8-year gap. That would be one of the worst bear markets ever, and I think by then you just lose people. So
Well,
I think
to clarify too, I don't think he's necessarily saying. I mean, yeah, he's saying like 8 years between a new all-time high, but I don't think he's calling it like a horrible bear market that entire time. I think he's saying in 4 years' time it comes back up and maybe gets near it, but doesn't surpass it or something.
yeah, but don't you think if it only reaches the previous all-time high? Imagine if Bitcoin were to only go to 70,000 this cycle.
Yeah.
Do you know how many people that would lose? Like, a lot of people would be like, "Fuck this, I'm out."
Yeah, stupid Bitcoin. Yeah, the stupid Bitcoin maxis. Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, and I don't agree. I don't think this is going to happen. I'm just saying that like the Bitcoin is diminishing gains. Now, I don't think this is going to happen. I also don't think it's going to 180K this cycle. But either way, we should expect far less returns for Bitcoin than it used to do. I don't think that is going to change. I mean, you're right, Ewok. Like, I mean, in terms of like the halvening and the cycles lining up, yes, I agree with you that like ETH and alts that have already existed should kind of follow those patterns with BTC. But I'm also saying that there's going to be new altcoins. So while I guess the headline of this Loukas tweet is a grim sounding one, like, oh my God, not another new all-time high for Bitcoin for 8 years or whatever. There's always going to be new opportunities, with new alts, new things that we don't even, 4 years on, my God, we couldn't even name yet or anything. Right. So I guess I'm just saying that, like, I don't think he's necessarily saying it's going to be a bear market for 8 years, but not another good BTC bull market. And yes, to answer your question, I do think that would lose people, and I think Bitcoin is going to continue to lose people because, I mean, right now people are having the worst returns on Bitcoin that have gotten into this market a cycle ago than its history. So that's going to continue. But yeah, I don't agree with the Bob Loukas thing. I just wanted to see, since we're talking about cycles and when we think the last top may have been, what you thought of his opinion there. So that's all.
That's my thoughts.
Yeah. But I'm not with him either. But yeah, I think Bitcoin, I don't know. I think we should be planning for anywhere between 80 and maybe almost double that this cycle. But the thing that I'm confused about is time. I mean, that's why we're having this conversation tonight. I mean, when does it get started in earnest? When does it end? Does the BlackRock ETF sell-off impacted that horribly? I don't know. I know Axis Alive has long been saying that he thinks this one goes into 2026, which would be very interesting. I mean, if that happens, I don't think there's really any bad scenario out of it. Whether that is kind of doing a left translated thing here early and then coming back up maybe towards like another year, the end of 2025. But yeah, there's a lot. Either way, you're not going to lose by being in the game. And, we try to time these things out all the time. You can really bog yourself down and get into the weeds too much and think like, oh man, I'm going to mess this cycle up. That's why we just try to calm down and have a longer time horizon, not meaning that, we won't want to take profits this cycle. Clearly you want to do that and have a plan for it. But just remember that, like, there's this condensed time over this next couple of years. And if you don't get it right, your life is screwed. You shouldn't look at it that way, but you should develop a plan anyway for taking profits. So,
well, Mr. Chinks brings up a very, very good quote that says, time in the market beats trying to time the market. So
yeah. Amen. Charlie Munger, rest in peace. I don't know if he said it or Warren Buffett or
I don't know.
But,
I don't either, but
yeah,
it's accurate.
Yeah. And shout out to Philly here. Exactly.
Sorry.
My bad.
Sorry.
Shout out to Philly. Hopefully most of us loaded up the previous few months. Exactly. Like this train is going to leave the station. We might even see the start of it happening right now, and people laugh at that all the time, but like there's a lot of alts right now that are like 3x up off their lows, and people are pissed off that they can't buy them anymore, or even worse, they are buying them right now.
Yeah.
You don't, Pulse Chain's all-time high was about 2x to 2.5x or so off of SAC rate, or whatever, 4025. You don't want to be as interested buying it then as you can right now. I mean, we still are, in my mind, auto buy chances right here, but who knows for how long. So